At my husband's funeral, while placing flowers on his coffin, I noticed something half hidden beneath the lilies, a white envelope with Michael's handwriting on it. I froze. My hands were shaking as I picked it up. It said, "To my dearest lover," and right beneath that was my name. For a moment, my heart stopped. The sound of people crying around me faded into silence. Why would my husband write a letter to a lover and then address it to me? It didn't make sense. I slipped the envelope into my purse, pretending nothing had happened. Nobody noticed. Before I tell you what happened, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. And if you believe in karma, hit like and subscribe, because this story will prove it. When I got home that night, I couldn't wait any longer. I locked my bedroom door, sat on the edge of my bed, and opened the envelope. Inside was a folded piece of paper written in Michael's familiar blue ink. His handwriting was neat, calm, too calm for a man who had just died 2 days ago. If you're reading this, Laura, it means I'm gone. I never wanted you to find out like this, but there's something you need to know. I read the first line over and over again. Gone? Find out what? He continued, saying there was another woman, someone named Evelyn. My stomach turned as I read that name. He described her as kind, understanding, someone who reminded me of who I was before life became complicated. I felt the air leave my lungs. Michael was writing to me about another woman, his lover, and yet the letter was addressed to me. He wrote about Evelyn's laughter, about how she made him feel alive again. Every word was a stab straight through my chest. But then came the part that made my skin crawl. You'll see her name someday, Laura. When you do, please try to understand why I did what I did. It wasn't betrayal. It was the only way to protect you. Protect me? From what? My hands were trembling as I flipped to the next page. His words got stranger. There's a key in the house, behind our wedding photo in the study. When you find it, open the desk. The truth is there. For a moment, I just sat there clutching the letter. The study had always been Michael's private space. I wasn't even allowed to clean it. He said he kept confidential work there. Now that I thought about it, Michael had been acting distant for months before his accident. Late-night calls, unexplained trips, that strange tension in his eyes when I'd ask about work. And now this letter, proof that something had been happening right under my nose. I walked straight to the study. The house was quiet, but my heartbeat wasn't. I took down our wedding photo from the wall. My hands were sweating so badly I almost dropped it. Behind the frame, taped to the back, was a small brass key. I stared at it for a long moment before unlocking the desk drawer. Inside were several envelopes, a small black notebook, and a velvet box. I opened the notebook first. Inside were pages filled with numbers, names, and dates. Some entries were circled in red, others crossed out. But one name kept appearing over and over: Evelyn Harper. I opened the velvet box next. Inside was a diamond ring, delicate and new. Not mine. My heart sank. Why would he buy a ring for another woman? I grabbed the envelope on top. It wasn't sealed. Inside were photographs, Michael and Evelyn standing together in front of a lake house. My lake house. The one he said he hadn't visited in years. In one photo, he was smiling at her the way he used to smile at me. In another, they were sitting by the porch steps, her head resting on his shoulder. I couldn't breathe. That lake house was ours. We built it together 10 years ago, long before the distance between us began. He told me he hadn't been there since we lost the baby. But these pictures, they were recent. I recognized the curtains I'd just replaced a few months ago. And then, something even stranger caught my eye. One of the photos had me in it. I was in the background near the window, blurry but unmistakable. The day he told me he was working late, he was there with her. And somehow I had been there too. My hands went cold. I felt like I was looking at proof that my whole marriage had been an illusion. But then, under the stack of photos, I found one last letter. It was shorter than the first, written in a rushed, uneven hand. Laura, if something happens to me, go to the lake house. Don't trust anyone, especially not Evelyn. You'll find out why soon. The handwriting looked different, shakier, desperate. The date was only 1 day before his death. That's when everything inside me changed. My grief turned into confusion, and confusion turned into fear. Michael's car crash had always felt strange. The police said he lost control on a wet road, but Michael was an experienced driver. He never sped. He never drank. And yet, his car hit a tree near the old highway leading straight to the lake house, the same lake in those photos. Why was he driving there the night he died? I reread the line again. Don't trust anyone. Especially not Evelyn. Who was she? A lover? A threat? I needed to know. So I did something I never thought I'd do. The next morning, I drove to the lake house. The road was quiet, lined with autumn trees shedding leaves like whispers. When I reached the cabin, everything looked exactly how I remembered, except the front door was already unlocked. My pulse raced. I pushed it open slowly. Dust floated through the air, and the faint smell of Michael's cologne still lingered. I called his name out of habit, knowing there'd be no answer. Then I saw it, a half-empty coffee mug on the table, still fresh enough to smell. Someone had been here recently. I looked around carefully. On the table lay a single piece of paper, folded neatly, just like Michael's letter. My name was written on it again. I picked it up with shaking hands. Inside was just one line. You shouldn't have come here, Laura. The paper slipped from my hands. I spun around, heart pounding, eyes scanning every corner of the house. But it was empty. Completely empty. Or at least, it looked that way. That's when I heard the faint sound of a floorboard creaking upstairs. I froze. Someone else was in the house, and before I could move or scream, a woman's voice called softly from above, calm and haunting. Laura, we need to talk about Michael. The voice upstairs sent chills through my entire body. For a moment I couldn't move. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but something deeper, maybe anger, maybe desperation, kept my feet glued to the wooden floor. I took a slow breath and called out, "Who's there?" No answer. Just the sound of slow, deliberate footsteps descending the staircase. And then I saw her. A woman stepped into view wearing a beige coat, her chestnut hair tied loosely at the back. She looked exactly like the photos from Michael's drawer, calm, composed, heartbreakingly familiar. Evelyn Harper. She didn't look shocked to see me. She looked expectant. "You came," she said softly. I tried to steady my voice. "You're Evelyn," she nodded once. "And you're Laura. I was afraid you wouldn't come here alone." The way she said it made my skin prickle. "How do you know I'm alone?" Her eyes flicked toward the window. "Because I watched you drive in." Something about the way she spoke, polite but cold, made it impossible to tell if she was friend or enemy. I folded my arms, hiding how much they were shaking. "You were having an affair with my husband." Evelyn sighed and stepped closer, the floor creaking beneath her. "If that's what you want to believe, I understand. But it's not the truth," I almost laughed. "You expect me to believe that after finding pictures of you holding hands with him?" She didn't flinch. Instead, she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out an old flash drive. "You'll want to see what's on this before you decide what to believe." I hesitated. "Why would I trust you?" "Because," she said quietly, "Michael trusted me with it before he died. And because the person who killed him might still be watching this house." Her words hit me like ice water. "Killed him? It was a car accident." She shook her head slowly. "That's what they wanted everyone to think." For a second, I couldn't breathe. The room seemed to tilt. "You're lying." "I wish I was," she whispered. "But you already know something was wrong." "You found his letters." I clenched my fists. "He told me not to trust you." That made her pause. "He said that?" I nodded. "His last note, he wrote, 'Don't trust anyone. Especially not Evelyn.'" Her face went pale. "Then he knew." "Knew what?" She looked toward the stairs as if listening for something. "We can't stay here. They could have the place wired. Michael didn't die because of me, Laura. He died because of what he found at the hospital." The hospital. My confusion grew deeper. Michael had worked as an accountant at a private medical foundation downtown. I always thought it was routine paperwork, grants, research funding, boring financials. What did he find? I asked. Evelyn hesitated. Proof of something illegal. The foundation was laundering research funds. Money meant for patient trials was going into private accounts. He told me he was going to expose it. The day before the crash, he said he had evidence locked away. "And you expect me to believe you?" She met my eyes with steady calm. "Check the drive. It's the only thing he sent me after our last call. I didn't even open it. I was too afraid." The way she said it, shaking slightly, her voice breaking just once, made me stop. If she was lying, she was good at it. But part of me felt that same quiet grief I'd carried since the funeral. I looked at the flash drive in her hand. If he found something that dangerous, why didn't he tell me? Evelyn smiled sadly. Because he was protecting you. Those words echoed exactly what the letter had said. Protecting me, a wave of guilt hit me. I'd spent days hating him for cheating. But what if everything, Evelyn, the secrecy, even the lies, had been part of something else? Still, I couldn't trust her completely. Why did he take you to our lake house then? There were pictures. Her eyes softened. Because I begged him to. He didn't want to involve me. But I worked for the same foundation. I was the one who showed him the forged ledgers. We met there to talk, not anything else. My throat tightened. So you weren't lovers? She looked directly at me. No, but he used that word in his notes because it was safer than saying partner. If anyone found the letters, they'd think it was just an affair. The explanation sounded insane. But something in me believed her. Before I could respond, a car door slammed outside. We both froze. Evelyn's expression changed instantly. They found us, she whispered. We need to leave, now. I moved toward the window. A black SUV had pulled up on the gravel drive. 2 men in suits stepped out, scanning the area like they were searching for someone. Who are they? I asked. People who don't want that drive to exist. Evelyn grabbed my hand. Back door, hurry! We slipped out through the kitchen and into the woods behind the cabin. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear the crunch of leaves underfoot. We didn't stop running until the house was a distant blur between the trees. When we finally reached the edge of the road, Evelyn leaned against a tree, gasping for breath. There's a diner 10 miles south, she said. We can go there, use the public Wi-Fi, and check what's on the drive. I stared at her. You want to open this now? We just ran from men in black suits. She gave a small, exhausted laugh. That's exactly why we have to open it. I hesitated, but followed. Something about her confidence made me trust her just enough. We reached the diner an hour later, our clothes damp with sweat and dirt. The waitress gave us a quick glance before walking away. Evelyn pulled out a small laptop from her bag. Clearly she'd been prepared for this. She plugged in the drive. A single folder appeared on the screen labeled Truth. Evelyn clicked it open. Inside were dozens of scanned documents, financial statements, bank transfers, and one video file. She opened the video. The footage was shaky, filmed on a phone. Michael's face appeared on the screen, tired but determined. If anyone's watching this, it means I couldn't make it. The evidence is real. The foundation is hiding trial results and stealing funds from cancer patients. I've been followed for days. Evelyn, if you're seeing this, tell Laura I love her. And Laura, don't trust anyone from my office. Especially James. The video cut off. My mind went blank. James was Michael's best friend. His co-worker. The same man who gave a eulogy at the funeral. Evelyn looked at me, eyes wide. James was the one who called me the night Michael died. He said the crash was quick, that there was nothing suspicious. I felt sick. He was lying. I replayed Michael's words in my head. Don't trust anyone. Now it made sense. James had been covering everything up. Evelyn shut the laptop. We need to get this to the police. But I wasn't thinking about police. I was thinking about revenge. About how I stood at Michael's grave, blaming him for betrayal, while the real traitor was standing beside me the whole time. Evelyn reached for my hand. Laura, we'll finish what he started. But you have to promise me something, no matter what happens next. Don't go near James alone. I nodded, but deep down I already knew I wouldn't keep that promise. Because there was one thing Michael hadn't told me in that video. Why he'd addressed that first letter to me as his lover, and I was going to find out. I didn't sleep that night. I just kept replaying Michael's video in my mind, his tired eyes, the fear in his voice, and that last sentence. Don't trust anyone from my office, especially James. James, the same man who had hugged me at the funeral, whispering he was like a brother to me. The man who organized Michael's memorial. The man who brought flowers to my house the next morning. I felt sick thinking about how close I'd stood to him. How I'd thanked him for being there, when all along, he might have been the reason my husband was in the ground. By sunrise, I had made my decision. Evelyn wanted to go to the police. I wanted answers. I got dressed, grabbed my car keys, and drove straight to the medical foundation where Michael and James worked. The building looked ordinary. Glass windows, marble floors, people carrying coffee cups, talking about meetings. But beneath that calm surface, something dark was hiding. James's office was on the 7th floor. I didn't have an appointment, but the receptionist recognized me. "Mrs. Carter," she said softly, "I'm so sorry for your loss. James just got in. Would you like me to—" "I'll go right in," I said before she could finish. When I opened his door, he was standing by the window, talking on the phone. He looked surprised to see me, but quickly ended the call. "Laura," he said, forcing a polite smile, "you shouldn't be here. You must still be grieving." I shut the door behind me. "I think you should sit down, James," he frowned. "Why?" I walked closer, keeping my voice calm. "Because I know about the foundation. The fake ledgers, the money, and Michael." For a split second, his expression changed, just enough to confirm everything I needed to know. Then he smiled again, slower this time. "You've been talking to Evelyn, haven't you?" I didn't answer. He sighed. "She's lying to you, Laura. She's been lying since day one. Michael got caught in her mess. That's why he crashed. She was blackmailing him." I almost laughed. "You expect me to believe that?" "I expect you to stop before you get yourself hurt." His tone was calm, but his eyes weren't. There was something sharp behind them, something I'd never noticed before. "I saw the video, James," I said finally. Michael recorded everything. The color drained from his face. What did you say?" I took a step closer. "He sent it to Evelyn. I watched it last night. He mentioned you by name." He stood completely still, like someone trying to decide between running or attacking. Then he slowly walked around the desk and leaned on it. "You shouldn't have done that," he said quietly. "You have no idea what you've walked into." "I know enough." He tilted his head. "No, you really don't. That video is going to get people killed, Laura. It was never supposed to exist." Something in his voice chilled me to the bone. "You're admitting it." "I'm saying you need to think about your safety." "For Michael's sake," I took another step back. "You killed him, didn't you?" His silence said everything. He rubbed a hand over his face, frustrated. "I didn't mean for it to happen. He was supposed to hand it over, the files, the evidence, everything. But he got paranoid. He called someone from his car that night. I had to make sure he didn't talk. I felt like the floor disappeared beneath me." "You were following him. I warned him, Laura," James said, his voice rising. "I told him to drop it, but he didn't listen. He drove straight toward the lake house. He wanted to give Evelyn the drive. She's not innocent in this either. Michael trusted her." He smirked. "Michael trusted the wrong people. He thought love and loyalty could fix corruption. He was naive. I felt tears sting my eyes, but anger pushed them back. "And you thought murder could fix it?" James leaned closer, his voice low and cold. "You think you're safe because you have that video? You're not. Those files were worth millions to the people funding this. If I don't get that drive, someone else will, and they won't be as polite as me." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed in my pocket. Evelyn's name flashed on the screen. James's eyes flicked toward it. "You tell her I said hello." I turned and walked out before he could say another word. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely press the elevator button. When I reached the parking lot, I finally answered the call. Evelyn's voice was frantic. "Laura, where are you?" "At the foundation," I said, trying to catch my breath. "You were right." James admitted it. There was a long pause. "You need to get out of there, now." "I already left." "No," she said, her voice trembling. "I mean, leave town. He's not working alone. I just got a message from one of Michael's old files. There's a tracking alert on your phone." "They're watching us," I froze. "What do you mean tracking?" "Michael must have set it up before he died. They accessed it this morning. They know you went to see James." I looked around the parking lot. A black sedan was parked 2 rows away, its engine still running. I couldn't see who was inside, but I didn't wait to find out. I jumped into my car and drove off, heart racing so fast it hurt. Evelyn stayed on the line. "Come to my apartment. I'll send the address. We'll hide the drive until we figure out who else is involved." I didn't argue. For now, she was the only person I could trust. Or at least, the only one who hadn't tried to kill me yet. When I got there, she was already waiting by the door. Her apartment was small but spotless, with boxes stacked by the walls, like she'd been planning to move. I handed her the flash drive. James knows about it. I figured he would, she said quietly, plugging it into her laptop. But there's more here than what we saw. She opened a hidden folder labeled "For L." Inside was one last file, a voice recording. Michael's voice filled the room, soft but clear. "Laura, if you ever find this, I'm sorry. You were never supposed to be dragged into this. Evelyn was the only one I could trust with the truth. If anything happens to me, protect her. She knows who's behind it all. And Laura, remember I love you. Always." I sat there frozen, my breath catching on every word. Protect her. Michael hadn't written to me as his lover out of guilt. He'd done it to hide the truth in plain sight. To make sure no one else would read those letters without thinking it was something personal, meaningless. It wasn't an affair. It was a cover. Evelyn looked at me, tears in her eyes. "He really did love you, Laura." I nodded slowly. "And he trusted you." We both sat in silence for a while, the weight of everything settling between us. But that peace didn't last long. Because just as Evelyn reached to close the laptop, the lights flickered. Then a single text popped up on her screen from an unknown number. "You shouldn't have opened it." The laptop shut itself off. The power went out completely, and before either of us could move, the sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway outside. The footsteps outside the door grew louder, slow, heavy, controlled. Evelyn and I exchanged a terrified glance. The apartment was completely dark now. Only the faint glow from the streetlights leaking through the blinds gave shape to the room. I whispered, "Do you have another way out?" She nodded toward the back window. "Fire escape," quietly. We moved carefully, hearts pounding, barely breathing. The floor creaked once under my weight, and whoever was in the hallway stopped moving. Silence. Then, the faint sound of a door handle turning. Hours. Evelyn froze mid-step. The lock started to twist. Without thinking, I grabbed the nearest thing I could find, a glass vase, and motioned for Evelyn to move. The handle rattled again, harder this time. Then suddenly, the knocking stopped. Evelyn whispered, "They're gone?" But before I could answer, a muffled voice came from behind the door, calm, male, familiar. "Laura, it's James." Every muscle in my body went rigid. He continued, "I just want to talk. Please don't make this harder than it has to be." Evelyn mouthed silently, "Don't open it." But James must have heard something because his tone changed, quieter, darker. "You think I don't know she's in there with you?" Evelyn Harper. "You really thought Michael was the only one who could keep secrets?" I felt Evelyn's hand clutch my wrist. Her pulse was racing like mine. James spoke again, his voice closer now. "You have something that doesn't belong to you. Hand over the drive and I'll let this go." Evelyn shook her head. "He's bluffing." But the sound that came next wasn't a bluff. It was the metallic click of a gun being cocked. We didn't wait. Evelyn yanked me toward the back window, threw it open, and we both climbed out onto the fire escape. The freezing wind hit my face as I tried to keep my balance on the old metal stairs. Behind us, the door finally burst open with a crash. James's voice echoed through the apartment. "You can't run from this." We scrambled down 2 floors and jumped the last few steps. Evelyn's car was parked behind the building. She tossed me the keys. "Drive!" We didn't stop until we were miles away. I could barely hold the steering wheel steady. My hands were shaking so violently. Evelyn kept looking behind us, making sure no one was following. Finally, when the city lights disappeared and only the empty stretch of road remained, she said, "We can't keep running forever. We need to expose them." "Expose who?" I asked. She took a deep breath. "The people behind the foundation, the investors." Michael found proof that the research was being faked, but it went higher than anyone expected. Some of those names belong to politicians, judges, even a senator. If that information gets out, they'll lose everything. And James? He was their cleanup man. His job was to make problems disappear. I gripped the wheel tighter. "Including Michael." Evelyn nodded. "Including Michael?" The road ahead split into 2. She pointed left. "There's a safe place, an old cabin Michael used once when he was collecting evidence. Nobody knows about it." I turned, following her directions, until we reached a narrow dirt road leading deep into the woods. The cabin looked abandoned, but the lock was new. Evelyn found the key hidden under a loose brick near the steps. Inside, the air smelled of old wood and dust. A generator hummed faintly in the corner. Evelyn lit a lantern, filling the room with a soft amber glow. "This is where Michael stayed the week before he died," she said. "He left another copy of the data here. He told me if anything happened, to come back for it." She went to a wooden chest in the corner, pulled it open, and inside were several sealed envelopes. She opened one, and my stomach twisted when I saw what was inside. Photographs, dozens of them, but these weren't pictures of Evelyn or the lake house. These were of James, meeting with men in suits, exchanging envelopes, standing beside cars with license plates covered. And then, one photo that made my blood run cold. James shaking hands with a man I recognized from the news. Senator Richard Hale. Evelyn whispered, "That's the man funding the foundation. He's the one who ordered everything buried." We heard a faint beep. Evelyn froze. "What was that?" I asked. She turned toward the window. "Tracking. They found us again." I ran to the light switch, turning it off. Outside, faint headlights were moving through the trees. Slow, careful, searching. "Back door," she said, grabbing the envelopes. "Take these and run if something happens." But before we could reach the back door, the glass window shattered. A bullet ripped through the wooden wall inches from my shoulder. I ducked instinctively, covering my head. Evelyn grabbed my arm, pulling me behind the couch. "Stay low!" More shots. The lantern fell and went out. The cabin plunged into darkness. Through the chaos, I could hear footsteps crunching outside, circling the building. "Give us the files, Evelyn," James's voice shouted. "You can still walk away." Her voice was steady but low. "He's bluffing again. They won't kill us until they have proof the data's gone." I crawled toward the kitchen, where the generator's faint glow leaked through a door crack. My hands brushed against a drawer. I opened it quietly. Inside was an old revolver, rusty, heavy, but loaded. I looked back at Evelyn. "We can't just sit here," she nodded. "I'll distract him. You get out the back." "No," I whispered fiercely. Michael trusted both of us. "We end this together." For the first time, she smiled, a small, tired, genuine smile. "Then let's finish it." The next few seconds blurred together. Evelyn stood, shouted something toward the window to draw his attention. The moment James fired again, I aimed and pulled the trigger. The sound was deafening. The shot shattered the glass where he was standing, and I heard him yell in pain. We didn't wait to see if he was down. We ran through the back door into the freezing woods, clutching the envelopes. The night was silent again, except for our footsteps and the wind through the trees. When we finally reached the road, a faint glow appeared ahead. Headlights. A car pulled up fast, and I raised the revolver instinctively. But it wasn't James. It was a police car. A uniformed officer stepped out, gun drawn. "Drop the weapon!" Evelyn shouted. "We're the victims! Please, you have to listen." Before I could say anything, another voice came from behind the police lights, firm, calm, and painfully familiar. "Mrs. Carter," it said. Senator Hale stepped into the headlights. Evelyn whispered under her breath. "Oh my God!" The officer lowered his gun. Hale walked closer, perfectly composed. "I think you've caused enough trouble for one night, don't you?" I raised the revolver again. "You're the one who killed my husband." He smiled faintly. "No, Laura. Your husband killed himself the moment he started digging where he didn't belong. But it's over now. Hand over the evidence, and maybe you'll both live to see tomorrow." Evelyn looked at me, her eyes full of dread but resolve. "No," she said softly. "Not this time." She pulled a small device from her pocket, Michael's flash drive, now connected to her phone. "Michael's files are already uploading to every major news outlet in the country." Hale's expression finally broke. "What?" "It's over," Evelyn said. He took a step forward, furious. But before he could reach us, the police sirens behind him started blaring again. Real ones this time. Dozens of them. Someone else had called the authorities. Evelyn dropped the phone and grabbed my hand. "Run!" We sprinted toward the forest again as cars flooded the dirt road. The last thing I heard before everything turned into chaos was Hale shouting orders and the flash of red and blue lights filling the night. We ran until the sirens faded into the distance. My lungs burned, my legs trembled, but adrenaline kept me moving. Somewhere behind us, men were shouting, tires screeched, and the night lit up with flashes of red and blue. When we finally stopped, Evelyn bent over, gasping. "They'll think we went north," she said between breaths. "We'll head south, toward the river." I nodded, unable to speak. Every part of me was still vibrating from fear and rage. Senator Hale's face was burned into my memory, that calm arrogance of a man who believed nothing could touch him. We followed the dirt path until the trees thinned and moonlight spilled over the riverbank. Evelyn crouched by the water, pulling Michael's backup envelopes from her jacket. They were soaked with sweat but still intact. "He really did it," she whispered. "He gathered everything." I knelt beside her. "You said those files were already uploading. So why are you still holding these?" She hesitated. "Because there's one thing he never digitized. Something he told me to keep hidden until you were ready." I frowned. "What is it?" She unfolded a small plastic pouch from the envelope. Inside was an old-fashioned cassette tape, labeled in Michael's handwriting. "For Laura, when it's over." My throat tightened. "You had this all along?" "He told me not to give it to you until we were safe," she said quietly. I didn't think that day would ever come. We found an abandoned boathouse nearby and slipped inside. The wooden boards creaked, but it was dry and quiet. Evelyn rummaged through a cabinet and pulled out a dusty portable tape player. Miraculously, it still worked. She pressed play. Michael's voice filled the tiny space, soft, exhausted, heartbreakingly familiar. "Laura, if you're hearing this," then Evelyn kept her promise. "I'm sorry for every lie I told, for every night I said I was working late. I needed you to believe I'd changed jobs so you wouldn't start asking questions. I was scared that if they found out you knew anything, they'd hurt you." I pressed a hand against my chest. His voice sounded so alive it hurt to breathe. "The Foundation isn't just laundering money. They're falsifying medical trials. Patients who think they're getting real treatment are being used as test subjects for unapproved drugs. Hale owns half the labs. James was his accountant, the cleaner, and me? I was supposed to make the numbers look right." Evelyn closed her eyes as Michael continued. "I couldn't live with it anymore. I started copying files, recording calls. Evelyn helped me without asking for anything in return. She's the bravest person I've ever met. When you meet her, please believe her." He paused, breathing hard. "But there's something she doesn't know. Something I couldn't tell her. Hale's plan wasn't just about money. He was building a private database, medical records of thousands of people, including you, Laura. Your name was in there. They wanted subjects with your genetic marker. That's why they kept you close. That's why I had to keep you in the dark." The words sank into me like knives. "My genetic marker?" I whispered. Evelyn stared at me, speechless. Michael's voice grew weaker. "I think they're following me now. If anything happens, don't trust anyone from the Foundation. Don't even trust the police. They're paid off. But promise me one thing. Whatever you do, don't destroy the data. Make them answer for what they did." A click, and then silence. The tape stopped. I sat there, staring at the player, feeling as if my world had tilted again. They were using my name, my DNA? Evelyn's voice was barely audible. "It makes sense now. Hale's project was called A-Gene. We thought it referred to cancer research. It wasn't. It was genetic mapping, illegal human trials. He must have discovered your medical record in Michael's files." I looked out through the cracked boards of the boathouse. In the distance, faint lights flickered, search parties still combing the woods. "He said not to destroy the data. That means we have to finish what he started." Evelyn nodded. "There's one station left we can use to upload everything. It's about 20 miles from here, in the next town. We waited until dawn. Then we moved. By the time the sun broke through the trees, we'd reached a small gas station at the edge of the highway. Evelyn borrowed a phone from the clerk and called a contact, a journalist Michael once trusted, a man named Daniel Reed. "He's expecting us," she said, hanging up. "He's the only one who can get this story out safely." We met Daniel in an old diner off the highway. He looked nothing like I expected, young, quiet, wearing a faded denim jacket and eyes that didn't flinch easily. Evelyn handed him the envelopes. "If anything happens to us, make sure this gets to the FBI." He scanned the documents quickly, then looked at us. "You realize how big this is? Hale's career will be over, maybe worse." "That's the idea," I said. But Daniel's expression changed. "If I publish this, They'll come after everyone connected to it, including you two. I met his gaze. They already did. He nodded slowly, tucking the papers into his bag. Give me 24 hours. Evelyn and I left the diner and checked into a roadside motel. For the first time in days, we were safe, or so we thought. That night, I dreamed of Michael. He was standing by the lake house, smiling like he used to, holding out his hand. But when I reached for him, his smile faded, and his lips moved silently. Don't stop now. I woke up to the sound of Evelyn's phone ringing. She answered, and her face drained of color. What? I asked. She lowered the phone. Daniel's gone. His car was found on the bridge an hour ago. They said it was an accident. The world seemed to blur around me. No, that can't be. He didn't even get the chance to send the files, she whispered. I grabbed the phone from her trembling hand and looked at the last text message on his screen. They found me. Finish it. A deep silence filled the room. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then I said, if they think they can scare us into stopping, they don't know who they're dealing with. Evelyn looked at me, and something changed in her eyes. Fear turned into resolve. Then we finish it, Laura, for Michael. For everyone they hurt, I nodded. But we need a plan. She walked to the window, staring out at the empty highway. We'll go public ourselves. There's a live news studio downtown. If we can get inside, they can't silence both of us in front of cameras. I felt the weight of Michael's voice still echoing inside me. Don't destroy the data. I knew what he meant now. He wasn't just asking for justice. He was asking for the truth to survive him, and I wasn't going to let him down. But what I didn't know was that before the next sunrise, one of us wouldn't make it to that studio alive. The next morning began with sirens in the distance, though they weren't for us, not yet. Evelyn and I had barely slept. We spent most of the night transferring files, recharging the small laptop, double-checking every document Michael had collected. By sunrise, the decision was made. We were going public. The nearest city was 2 hours away. Inside it, there was a 24-hour news channel, NXT Network, a station Michael once mentioned in his notes. Their anchors were live around the clock, streaming straight to social platforms. If we could walk into their studio with proof, Hale couldn't silence us without being seen. We packed what little we had and left the motel before dawn. I drove while Evelyn sat beside me, watching the road through tired eyes. Do you ever think, she murmured, that Michael knew it would come to this? I nodded. He planned every step. Even the letters, she gave a weak smile. He loved you more than he loved his own life. That silence between us wasn't awkward. It was full of everything we didn't have to say: grief, fear, gratitude. As the city skyline came into view, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me glance at the screen. A single message appeared. Don't trust her. My grip on the wheel tightened. Evelyn noticed. What is it? Nothing, I said quickly, pocketing the phone. But my mind was racing. Don't trust her. Who sent that? Hale? James? Or someone else entirely? We reached downtown just after 8. The NXT Network building stood tall, its glass front reflecting the morning sun. Security was tight, metal detectors, ID badges, uniformed guards. Evelyn adjusted her coat, straightened her hair, and whispered, "Follow my lead." I frowned. "You've been here before?" "Once," she said. "For a foundation interview. I know a producer inside." Something about the way she said it unsettled me, but I didn't have time to question it. We walked through the doors together. Evelyn flashed a lanyard badge I hadn't seen before. The guard barely looked at it and waved us through. Inside, the building buzzed with energy. Journalists shouting, phones ringing, lights flickering on studio sets. Evelyn guided me toward an elevator at the back. "The control floor," she said. "If we get the files on their live server, nobody can take them down." As the elevator doors closed, I glanced at her. She looked calm, too calm. "Evelyn," I said quietly, "who sent that message?" She didn't look surprised. "You got one too?" My heart skipped. "What do you mean, too?" Her voice was barely a whisper. Mine said, "Don't trust her either." We stared at each other for a long second as the elevator climbed. Neither of us spoke again until it stopped. The control room was colder than I expected. rows of monitors, blinking lights, a wall of live feeds. A young technician glanced up. "Can I help you?" Evelyn smiled. "Breaking news. Urgent whistleblower file. You'll want your senior producer." The tech frowned but picked up a phone. Within minutes, a woman in a navy suit entered, brisk and curious. Evelyn introduced herself and handed over the flash drive. "This contains proof of federal fraud, human trial violations, and a list of names involved," Evelyn said firmly. "You go live, and we'll tell the whole country." The producer looked skeptical. "That's a big claim." "It's all verified," I said. "Michael Carter, he worked for the Hale Medical Foundation. He died trying to expose this." Recognition flickered in the woman's eyes. "I remember that crash." She nodded toward her tech team. "Upload it." For a moment, relief flooded through me. This was it, the moment we'd been fighting for. But then the screens flickered. Lines of static. The tech frowned. "That's odd. There's encryption on this file. Looks like someone's trying to access it remotely." "From where?" Evelyn asked. "Multiple IPs. One of them traces back to..." Before he could finish, the entire control wall went black. The producer cursed. "What the hell just happened?" The overhead speakers crackled to life with a distorted male voice. I recognized it instantly, James. "You really think you could outrun us, Laura? You think Michael's little games would save you?" Every screen lit up again, not with news feeds, but with video footage. Surveillance clips of me and Evelyn running through the woods, the diner, even the motel parking lot. They'd been watching us the whole time. The producer turned pale. "Who's doing this?" I whispered. "Hale's people." James's voice came again, calm, mocking. "Give me the drive, and I might let you live long enough to regret it." I looked at Evelyn. Her hand was shaking. "We have to finish the upload manually," she said. "The studio's backup server. Basement level." The producer grabbed her walkie. "Security! Lock down the elevators!" But it was too late. The doors behind us slid open, and two men in black suits stepped out. Hale's guards. Evelyn shoved the laptop into my hands. "Go," I hesitated. "Not without you." She pushed me hard toward the side door. "Go, Laura. You're the only one he won't shoot on sight." "I'll stall them." I ran. Down the stairs, through narrow hallways, following signs toward the maintenance room. My heart pounded so hard I thought I'd collapse. I found the basement servers, a wall of humming metal cabinets. I plugged the laptop into the main port and hit upload. A progress bar appeared at 12%, 24%, 47%. Upstairs, muffled shouting echoed through the building. Then gunshots. I froze. "Evelyn?" I whispered. Though I knew she couldn't hear me, the upload climbed painfully slow. 71%. 83%, 95%. Then a loud crash. The basement door burst open. James stepped inside, gun drawn, his white shirt spattered with blood. "Where's Evelyn?" I whispered. He smiled faintly. "She didn't make it." My breath caught. He stepped closer, aiming the gun at my chest. "Unplug it, now." The progress bar hit 99%. I shook my head. "You killed Michael. You killed her. But you're not killing this." I lunged sideways, just as he fired. The bullet tore through the laptop screen, but not before the final sound pinged through the speakers. Upload complete. James realized it too late. The screens above the server room flickered to life with Michael's video, the same one we'd seen, now broadcasting across the network. His voice filled the air. "If you're watching this, the truth is out. The Foundation, Senator Hale, James Cooper, they've built an empire on stolen lives." James lowered the gun slowly, his face turning white. Footsteps thundered in the hallway. Real police this time, not bought ones. James dropped the weapon and raised his hands, but I barely noticed. I was staring at the flickering image of Michael, tears streaming down my face. He'd done it. We'd done it. The officers rushed in, cuffing James and shouting orders. One of them guided me out. "Ma'am, you're safe now." Safe. The word didn't feel real. As they led me outside into the cold daylight, the world around me blurred with flashing lights, cameras, and reporters shouting questions. But all I could think about was Evelyn, brave, loyal Evelyn, and Michael's final words on that screen. The truth doesn't die with people. It lives with those who choose to carry it forward. I looked up at the sky, whispering to him through my tears. "It's over, Michael." I kept my promise. But deep down, I knew it wasn't over. Not completely. Because once the world saw what they'd done, the people behind Hale would come for me next, and I was ready for them. For the first time in weeks, the city looked normal again. People walked dogs, bought coffee, went to work as if the night before hadn't happened. But everywhere I went, I saw Michael's face on screens. Whistleblower's widow exposes billion-dollar fraud. Senator Hale under federal investigation. It was surreal. The story had exploded overnight. Hale was in custody. James was facing charges. And me, Laura Carter, the woman everyone had pitied at a funeral a week ago, was suddenly the center of every headline. I should have felt relief, justice, closure. But the truth didn't feel like freedom. It felt like a weight that refused to lift. The FBI had me in protective housing, a quiet apartment overlooking the river. 2 agents sat outside my door, rotating shifts. They said it was only until Hale's associates were caught. They meant well, but I knew better. I was a living reminder of what they'd done, and people like that didn't forgive reminders. Every night I replayed Evelyn's last words before she ran toward those men upstairs. Go, Laura. She never got to see Michael's video reach the world, and that guilt hollowed me out. On the 4th night, an agent handed me a sealed envelope. This came through the Bureau's evidence transfer, he said. Your husband's property. Inside was Michael's wedding ring and a small memory card taped beneath it. No label, no note, just a tiny piece of plastic waiting to be understood. I borrowed the agent's tablet, inserted the card, and opened the only file it contained. Audio MP3. Michael's voice again. Older this time, slower, Laura. If you found this, it means the broadcast worked. But I didn't tell you everything. There's a reason they wanted your records. The A gene wasn't about profit, it was about replication. They found a mutation in your blood that could resist an entire class of synthetic viruses. Hale wanted to sell that sequence to a defense contractor. That's why they targeted you through me. I gripped the tablet tighter. My blood? I whispered. You were the key to everything, he continued. That's why I had to hide the samples. I couldn't let them patent you. There's a lab locker under my name at the university. Box 47. You'll know what to do when you see it. The recording ended with a faint rustle and then nothing. Box 47. I sat there for a long time, staring at the tablet, trying to decide whether to tell the agents. But something deep in my gut said no. The fewer people knew, the safer the truth would be. The next morning I signed out for a walk. Instead, I took a cab across town to the university's biomedical wing, the same building Michael used to visit on conference days. My hands trembled as I told the clerk I was picking up personal property from storage. She didn't even ask for ID. The name Michael Carter was still on a federal hold list. She simply pointed me to the basement archives. The room smelled of formaldehyde and metal. Rows of gray lockers lined the walls, each marked with faded numbers. I found 47 in the back corner. The lock was old but not complicated. I broke it open with a screwdriver I'd borrowed from a janitor's cart. Inside was a small cooler box wrapped in silver insulation. A note taped to the lid said, "Keep frozen, property of LC." I lifted the lid. Inside were 3 glass vials filled with crimson liquid and a USB drive sealed in plastic. It hit me all at once. LC wasn't just Michael's way of tagging Laura Carter. It was the code for the genetic sequence he'd hidden. Me. I pocketed the drive and replaced the cooler exactly as it was. On my way out, I noticed a camera blinking in the corner of the hallway. Someone was still monitoring this place. Back in the cab, I connected the drive to my phone. It opened to a single encrypted file titled Legacy. The password field blinked. For a second, I couldn't think of anything. Then I typed our wedding date. It worked. The screen filled with scanned documents. Research notes, DNA maps, medical charts, all labeled with my patient ID. At the bottom was a final handwritten line from Michael. If the truth ever threatens to become another weapon, destroy it. Some knowledge shouldn't belong to anyone. Tears blurred the screen. For weeks I had been fighting to protect the truth, to honor him. But he'd left me a different choice, to protect humanity from the truth itself. I closed the file and pressed delete. A warning popped up. This action is irreversible. I whispered, I know, and tapped Confirm. The drive went dark. For the first time since Michael's funeral, I felt something like peace. Not triumph, not joy, just peace. When I stepped out of the cab, one of the agents was waiting on the sidewalk, phone in hand. "Ma'am, we lost your signal for an hour," he said. "Where did you go?" "Just wanted to see the river," I lied. He nodded, unconvinced but too tired to argue. That evening, I stood by the window watching the sun sink behind the city. The news played softly on TV updates about Hale's sentencing, the arrests, the fallout. The world had moved on. But in my heart, the story wasn't about corruption or politics. It was about a man who gave everything to protect the woman he loved, and a truth too dangerous to live in anyone's hands. I took Michael's ring, slid it onto a chain around my neck, and whispered, "We did it." A knock sounded at the door. One of the agents peeked in. "You've got a visitor," I frowned. "Who?" He stepped aside. A woman entered, tall, brown hair pulled back, eyes hidden behind dark glasses. For a heartbeat, my mind refused to believe what it saw. "Evelyn?" I breathed. She smiled faintly. "You didn't think I'd go down that easily, did you?" I froze. "But they said—" "I know what they said," she interrupted. James missed. "I've been underground ever since. Figured it was safer to let them think I was dead." Relief and anger collided inside me. "You could have told me," she shrugged. "If you'd known, they would have watched you even closer. You finished what we started, Laura. I just came to say goodbye." "Where will you go?" "Somewhere quiet. Somewhere they don't know my name." She turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Michael would have been proud of you. When she was gone." I looked out at the river again, the chain warm against my skin, the city glowing beneath the sunset. Michael once said the truth never dies. It only waits for the right person to carry it. Maybe that person wasn't him. Maybe it wasn't even me. But at least now it was free. The weeks after Evelyn's visit passed like slow waves. I wasn't running anymore, and yet I didn't feel free. The investigation was over. Hale's empire had collapsed, the news cycle had moved on, and the world had already chosen new scandals to feed on. But for me, the silence after the chaos felt heavier than the noise ever was. The FBI gave me permission to return to my own house. Walking back inside was harder than I expected. Everything still looked the same. The framed photos, the coffee mug by the sink, even Michael's sweater draped over the chair. Dust had gathered on the surfaces, but time hadn't erased him. I spent the first night there awake, sitting on the couch where we'd used to fall asleep, watching old movies. Every corner of that house held a memory, but now they didn't hurt the same way. They felt like gentle ghosts, reminding me that even in all the deception, love had been real. The next morning, a package arrived at my door. No sender, just my name written in neat, familiar handwriting. For a moment, my heart stopped. I thought it might be another threat. But when I opened it, I found something else entirely. Inside was a leather-bound notebook, old and scuffed, with a note tucked inside. "Found this among your husband's recovered belongings. Thought you might want it. Agent Torres." It was Michael's handwriting on the first page. His journal. I hesitated before turning the pages, afraid of what new pain it might bring. But what I found wasn't guilt or secrets. It was love. Raw, flawed, desperate love. He wrote about how the first time he saw me cry after losing the baby, he made himself a promise never to let me feel powerless again. How the corruption at the foundation made him sick. How he'd wake up at night, terrified that the people he worked for might one day come after me. And then, halfway through the notebook, one line caught my eye, one he'd written in bold letters. "She'll think I betrayed her, but one day she'll know I was protecting her from the truth." I read that line over and over, tears blurring the ink. He'd known exactly how it would look, the secrecy, the lies, even the letter that started everything. He'd chosen to be misunderstood if it meant I'd be alive to find out the truth later. There were small sketches between pages. A ring, a key, and beneath one drawing, he'd written, "Love is trust you give even when you can't see the reason." That night, I placed the journal on the table beside his photo. For the first time, I whispered aloud, "I forgive you." A strange calm filled the room, like the house itself exhaled with me. The next morning, I called Evelyn. She didn't answer, But she'd left me a message earlier, a voice recording that said, "I'm somewhere warm. Don't look for me. Just live." I smiled through tears. "I will," I whispered. "For both of you." Life didn't go back to normal, not really. You don't unsee the kind of darkness we exposed. But I started small. I went back to teaching art classes at the community center, something I'd abandoned years ago. Kids laughed, paint splattered, and for a few hours each day, I remembered how to breathe again. People sometimes recognized me on the street. The widow who brought down the senator. But fame didn't matter. I wasn't a hero. I was just a woman who opened a letter she was never meant to find. One evening, I visited Michael's grave for the first time since the funeral. The white lilies I'd placed months ago were long gone, replaced by new ones from strangers. I knelt, touching the name carved into stone. "I finally understand," I whispered. "You didn't write that letter to your lover. You wrote it to the part of me that would have to become one. To love the truth more than comfort." I placed his journal beneath the flowers, a final offering. As I turned to leave, a soft breeze brushed against my face. Maybe it was nothing, or maybe it was him. Driving home that evening, the sunset painted the sky gold and crimson. For the first time, I rolled the windows down and let the wind hit my face. I didn't feel haunted anymore. When I reached the lake house, yes, I went back. I stood at the edge of the water where everything began. The reflections danced like liquid fire. I remembered Michael's voice from the tape. The truth doesn't die with people. It lives with those who choose to carry it forward. That night, I decided to start recording my own voice. Not for revenge, not for sorrow, but for remembrance. For anyone who ever lost everything in the name of love or justice. I started speaking softly into the recorder. "My name is Laura Carter. I once thought my husband betrayed me. I thought he died with secrets. But what I've learned is that truth and love often come wrapped in pain. And sometimes, you have to lose everything to understand what you really had." I paused, my voice trembling. "Before I tell you what happened, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. And if you believe in karma, hit like and subscribe, because this story proved it." A smile crept across my face. Michael would have laughed hearing that line. He used to say I had a storyteller's heart. Maybe he was right. That's how it began. The first video of the channel I started a year later. It wasn't about politics or corruption. It was about real people, real choices, and the quiet kind of bravery that lives in ordinary hearts. I called it Letters from Laura. Each story began the same way, with truth, pain, and one promise, that no matter how dark life gets, love always leaves a light somewhere to follow home. And every time I said the words, "Don't forget to like and subscribe," more life stories are waiting for you. I felt like Michael was still there, somewhere, smiling. It had been a full year since the story broke. My channel, Letters from Laura, had grown beyond anything I imagined. Millions of people tuned in every week to hear stories about love, betrayal, forgiveness, and the strange ways life tests us. Every time I turned on the camera, I thought of Michael and how one letter, just one, had changed everything. I'd learned to live again. I cooked for myself, took long walks by the river, even adopted a little rescue dog I named Lily. Peace had finally started to feel real, until the day another letter arrived. The envelope looked almost identical to the one I found at Michael's funeral. Same cream paper, same blue ink. But this one wasn't weathered or smudged. It looked new, fresh. There was no sender, no return address. Just my name, Laura. My hands went cold. It couldn't be. He was gone. I opened it slowly, my heart pounding the way it had that first day by the coffin. Inside was a single folded page. At the top, in Michael's handwriting, were the words, "For the woman who found the truth." I sat down, afraid my knees might give out. "Laura," it began, "if this letter ever reaches you, it means Evelyn kept her final promise. I asked her to send it a year after everything ended, when you were ready. I didn't want this to be another burden. I wanted it to be a gift." My eyes blurred as I read. "You once told me that love dies when trust is broken. I used to believe that too, but now I think love becomes something else. It becomes memory, faith, a voice that whispers from the other side, reminding you that every choice mattered. I touched the page as if I could feel him through the ink. I kept one secret even Evelyn didn't know. The genetic code they were trying to steal, it wasn't just about you. It was something we shared. That marker they found, it came from both of us. You were never their experiment, Laura. You were the reason they failed. Together, we made something they could never reproduce: hope. I stopped reading for a moment. Tears spilled down my face before I even realized I was crying. If you ever feel alone, remember the lake, the wind, the letters. They're all pieces of the same story, the story of two people who refuse to let lies win. Tell it in your own way, to whoever will listen. Make sure no one ever forgets what we learned. Truth without compassion is just cruelty, dressed as justice. You taught me that. I pressed the page to my chest and closed my eyes. His voice was everywhere, in my head, in my heart. In the faint rustle of the leaves outside the window, there was one last line written at the bottom. P.S. Look inside the piano bench. I laughed through my tears. That old piano had sat untouched since before he died. I walked over, lifted the lid, and found a small velvet box. Inside was a silver locket with our initials carved on the back. I opened it. On one side was our wedding photo. On the other, a tiny folded note. Forever means never stopping, even when you're gone. I sat on the piano bench for hours, the letter open beside me, the locket warm in my hands. For the first time, the memories didn't ache, they glowed. That night, I recorded a new video. Not another story about strangers. This one was mine. The camera light blinked red. I took a deep breath and began. A year ago, I buried my husband and thought my life ended there. But sometimes endings are just beginnings that haven't introduced themselves yet. The truth I found didn't destroy me, it rebuilt me. And it taught me that love doesn't disappear when someone dies. It waits quietly in the spaces we forget to look. I smiled softly. So if you've ever lost someone, listen carefully. The love you had isn't gone. It's still here, hiding in your favorite song, your morning coffee, the wind at the lake. You just have to notice it. For a long moment, I said nothing. The quiet felt sacred. Then I closed with the words that had started it all. Before I tell you what happened, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. And if you believe in karma, hit like and subscribe, because this story proved it. When I turned off the camera, the sun had already set. The room glowed gold with the last light of day. I looked at the letter one more time, folded it carefully, and placed it inside the locket with the photo. Outside, the wind moved through the trees, soft and steady, like a heartbeat. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was talking about Michael anymore. I felt like I was talking with him. 5 years have passed since that day. Sometimes it still feels like I'm waking up inside someone else's life, one I didn't plan for but somehow learned to love. The world changed after the scandal. The foundation was dismantled. New laws were passed. Senator Hale never walked free again. People still send me letters, some from victims' families, others from strangers who just want to say they believe in truth again. But when the cameras turned away and the noise faded, what was left wasn't fame or justice. It was quiet. And in that quiet, I started to hear my own voice again. Letters from Laura became more than a channel. It became a community. People shared their own stories, losses, heartbreaks, second chances. Every message reminded me that the story Michael and I lived through wasn't just ours. It was a reflection of what everyone faces at least once. The fight to find meaning when life rips it away. On the anniversary of his death, I always returned to the lake house. The old wooden steps still creak, the same way they did the day everything fell apart. I sit on the porch with Lily at my feet, the water reflecting the sky in ripples of blue and gold. I used to think the lake was cursed. Now I see it as a mirror. It shows you exactly where you are, even when you're afraid to look. That afternoon, as I unpacked my bag, I found the locket again. The tiny note inside hadn't faded. Forever means never stopping, even when you're gone. I smiled. You kept your promise, Michael, I whispered. And I kept mine. There's something peaceful about talking to someone you can't see. It's like writing to the universe and knowing somehow it listens. I took out my recorder and began speaking. Not for the channel this time, but for myself. 5 years ago, I thought truth was about exposing lies. I thought justice was something you win. But I've learned that truth isn't a weapon, it's a mirror. It shows us who we are, what we've loved, what we've lost. And justice? It's not victory. It's healing, Lily barked softly, tail wagging, as if she agreed. If anyone ever finds these words, I hope they remember. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting what someone did. It means remembering without letting it poison you. I stopped for a moment, looking across the water. The sun was setting the same way it had the night I first drove here with Evelyn. She's somewhere in South America now. She sends postcards sometimes. Never a return address. Just a single line. Still fighting in my own way. I think Michael would be proud of her too. As the last light disappeared, I stood and walked to the edge of the lake. I opened my hand and let the silver locket fall into the water. It sank slowly, catching the light one last time before vanishing beneath the surface. I didn't feel sadness. I felt release. Because love doesn't live in objects, it lives in what they leave behind. That night, I drove back to the city. The lights stretched across the horizon like constellations, bright and endless. My channel's next story was already outlined in my head, not about corruption, not about death, but about beginning again. The next morning, I sat in front of the camera. The same camera I'd used years ago, though the woman sitting in front of it was no longer the same. I pressed record and smiled. I used to believe stories ended when people left us. I don't believe that anymore. The story doesn't end, it changes narrators. And when you learn to tell it with love instead of grief, it becomes something beautiful. I paused, then added softly, so if you're listening tonight, wherever you are, remember this. The truth may hurt, but it's the only thing that can heal you. And love, it never dies. It just finds new ways to be heard. I leaned closer to the microphone, my eyes stinging with tears that felt more like gratitude than pain. Did you like my story? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe. More life stories are waiting for you. When I ended the recording, the room filled with silence again. But this time it didn't feel empty. It felt alive. Outside, the wind moved through the trees, just like it did the day I found that first letter. Somewhere in that sound, I could almost hear Michael's laughter. I closed my eyes, let the warmth of the morning light wash over me, and whispered the words that had carried me through every storm since that day. Forever means never stopping, even when you're gone. And for the first time, I truly understood what he meant. Did you like my story? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe. More life stories are waiting for you.